Welcome to this webinar. This webinar is organized by EXIN, and the webinar is about EXIN's program about IT service management based on ISO 20K. This webinar will be presented by David Clifford. I will do the introduction, and my name is Harold de Vries. I'm a product market manager at EXIN. So I'm glad you are all here. We expect about, we have 50 registrations. Most people normally do not join, so we expect about 25 people in this webinar. Yeah, I'm happy you are here. Okay, let's see some rules. All your phones are on mute, so if you try to speak, I cannot hear you. So if you want to say something, please raise your digital hand, and I can unmute you. And yeah, I'm the host. That's clear, I think. Okay, this webinar will be recorded. The agenda is as follows. I will do the introduction, then we get the presentation by David Clifford, and then there is time for questions and answers. Okay, let's move on. First of all, I would like to say something about a new title EXIN has just introduced into the market, and that's the title Certified Integrator Secure Cloud Services. This is about an integrated title. So why did we launch this new title? Because from the market we have heard that there is a need for an integrated approach. Because if you look at cloud computing, there is companies are still reluctant in embracing cloud computing. And this has two major reasons. The first reason is about security. Companies have concerns about privacy, integrity, and identity of data. And there is also a reliability concern, a big reliability concern. And this has mainly to do with the availability of data, the quality, and the continuity. Of course, this can be tackled by service level agreements, and this is just one example. But this has all to do with IT service management, the latest one. The first one, of course, has to do with security. So there is a need for an integrated approach. Companies are looking for generalists today with solid knowledge in adjacent domains. So in studying cloud computing, service management, and information security in their shared context, you will get a better understanding of their relationships. And that's exactly what EXIN has done. So we introduced the EXIN Certified Integrator Secure Cloud Services. So that's an integration of three main programs. The first is the program is IT Service Management. Then we look at the domains of ITIL and EXIN's program on IT Service Management. That combined with information security and cloud computing. So if a candidate has the three shown certificates, he will get that title. Here we look at the different roles. So there are three roles, and we integrate those roles. So we talk about the IT service manager, the security officer, and the information manager. And this is the result. So this is just an example of the certificate. It's a digital but also on paper. Candidates receive this, and it contains the title and also the underlying certificates. Right. Okay. Now I would like to tell you that we have two more webinars, because this is a whole series. We started with explaining the Certified Integrated title. Today, we are here to explain EXIN's program on IT service management. Next week on Friday, we will have a webinar about information security. And then in March, we will finalize the whole series with a webinar about EXIN cloud computing. So today, it's IT service management. and I'm proud to present David Clifford, the expert on IT service management, and he will give you all insights into the whole program. Okay, David, I will hand over the presenter role to you. So that's done. Okay, good luck.
Thank you, Harold. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us regarding the EXIN IT Service Management Qualification Program. What I'm going to do is go through a brief background regarding the program and its positioning within the marketplace, and explain the qualifications and how they can benefit an IT service management professional, and then compare it with the ITIL qualification scheme as well, and hopefully answer any questions as we go through. I'd encourage you to ask questions for any points of clarity. If you're not too sure about something that I've mentioned, or perhaps even disagree with that, that's obviously perfectly fine, and I'll try and explain why I've positioned something as I have. So let's get straight into the session. So the program overview. In terms of the philosophy around this program, what EXIN tried to do was, rather than try to do everything that we could do regarding IT service management, they've taken a philosophy in terms of looking at why not focus on everything that we must do initially. Perhaps you would agree that if we have, if you consider all the best practice that we have within the IT service management space, there's a lot of it. If you look at the ITIL books alone, there are thousands of pages regarding ITIL in the official publications and many other complementary publications. But of course, there's more to IT service management than ITIL. We have COBIT, we have various standards, we have many other best practice publications that perhaps we'll refer to as well to help us to get to where we want to be regarding supporting our customers and delivering a good service to them. So what EXIN have said, rather than thinking about everything that we could do regarding service management and try and embrace all of the best practices or all of the content of one particular best practice, for example, like ITIL, we've said, let's focus on those critical things, get them right, and make sure that we're operating in a good way, that we're listening to our customers, we're integrated well with our suppliers, we're integrated well within our own teams, and we're continuing and focusing on service improvement as well. At that point, when we've got a good foundation for service management, then we can consider other things. But to get to the point of looking at the critical must-do elements of service management, that can still take quite a lot of effort and work. So EXIN has said, concentrate on the critical elements. As a result of this, the training result would be, hopefully you would agree, clearer, simpler, quicker, and arguably more effective service management as well. Because rather than thinking about everything we need to do, we're just focusing on those critical elements and keeping it nice and clear. The general qualification program philosophy carried on from that particular concept. So what EXIN have done is said, again, let's focus on what the person needs when they need it. So the the candidate themselves will attend a course, and the training content, the syllabus, and the testing of the training course as well will be very much focused around what that person needs. So, for example, for a service desk analyst, why would they need to know about strategies and any other wider details on service management at the start of their career? Let's focus them down on the critical elements that they need to understand, a general overview of service management, focusing on the operational support type activities and how they integrate more within the other operational areas, and get it right there. So narrow the training in this particular example for a service desk analyst, and make sure that they can understand in detail the content that's appropriate to them, rather than trying to go too wide in terms of awareness around service management. And then as you move up through the qualification program, then you can start to learn wider and deeper in terms of what service management's about and how the ripple in the water then starts to affect the wider world in that area as well. EXIN also have recognized, of course, that there are service management professionals out there who have many other qualifications currently. That could be within the various EXIN qualification programs. Harold's just mentioned a few of the new ones, like the cloud computing side and security, but it could be in other qualification programs as well. And what EXIN have done is said, okay, well, we'll recognize the existing investment as far as service management is concerned and give some value to that in terms of the qualification program. So if you have some other qualifications, the typical ones like an ITIL foundation or an ITIL lifecycle module, then that will give you some credit in terms of this particular qualification program to take a side entry route, so you don't have to go through the whole structure. And it's not just about the ITIL qualifications, there's a whole host of other ones as well that are available for being recognized. Talking about the commercial side of things, EXIN has been very, very clear in terms of its intention to make sure that this qualification program actually works within the commercial world. For example, EXIN could have taken the approach whereby the content of the courses was so deep and so wide in its scope that courses could have taken 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 days and longer to actually deliver what the syllabus was potentially designed to deliver. But commercially, that's not going to work. People find it difficult to take time away from work because we all have operational demands on our time, be that as an operational IT service management person or perhaps as a consultant to the service management people. So it was very much a clear criteria that this had to work commercially as well as still deliver the key value to the individual after they've attended a training course. So they walk out of the room with some practical, not theoretical, but practical knowledge that is able to be delivered in a short time frame during a training course that then they can build upon and take back into the workplace to start applying some of those learning lessons in the real world. So very much taking it from this point of trying to reduce down the learning time, but maximize the content learning time within that period. And they've done that by reducing down to the must-do, the critical elements of service management, rather than concentrating on everything that you could do. This qualification program has also been recognized within the industry, for example, by ITSMF International's PRISM Institute. The PRISM Institute has actually been launched to recognize individual performance and capability within service management, and that is independently recognized, and you are awarded a credential level depending on your experience and your qualifications that you have. And these qualifications have been recognized as a contribution towards the application to ITSMF International's PRISM Institute, and also for renewal through the continual professional development side of things as well. The qualifications have also been recognized as part of the complementary qualifications for the ITIL qualification scheme. And indeed, the qualification program itself has received an innovation award from one of the ITSMF chapters, saying this is a good qualification program and certainly has space in the world. Talking about space, just moving on to the next slide. As far as you can see a picture here of the universe. Some people consider that the universe has ITIL at the center of it. As far as ITIL is concerned, yes, it is a very important framework within our organization and within our industry. However, ITIL is not the world. ITIL is not the center of the universe. There are many other areas. At this point, I'm just going to pause because I believe Pedro has a question. Pedro, you ask, is the market evaluating the course? If you could just clarify that question for me, please. When you say evaluating the course, could you just explain that a little bit further? Perhaps, Harold, if you could unmute Pedro and you could talk.
David, are you listening to me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, David. The question is concerning all the program, not the course itself, but all the 2000 program, because the market knows the ITIL program from the last 15 years, and when the market receives CV from someone and is able to recognize the course or the potential of ITIL certification. The question is the market recognizing all the program, all these new program, because it's quite new. It has maybe 4-5 years. All the market, not for the commercial way, but for the commercial perspective, but the market itself. Is the market evaluating people that are investing in careers to get better performance, better skills, better capabilities?
Thank you, Pedro. I understand that. Thank you for a very good question. So, as far as the EXIN's ITSM qualification program is concerned, it is approximately 4 or 5 years old now. It has gone through continual improvement during this time, and that's what I'm going to move on to in a few minutes. However, Pedro's question is focused on, is there really recognition of this qualification program in the IT service management industry? Do people understand what an IT service management foundation or the associate level or the executive in IT service management is about, what its content and what its value is, and how that compares with ITIL. Plainly speaking, of course, ITIL has been in existence since the early 1990s and has a long pedigree of awareness within the industry. So definitely the ITSM qualification program is not at the level of ITIL yet. EXIN wants it to be at that level and have put, over the last few years, a lot of marketing investment in terms of actually making sure that people are aware of this program, and they continue to do that via various mechanisms. One of the key mechanisms that they have is by working with other industry bodies to help with the recognition, and I've just talked about a couple of those, but they are doing their own independent marketing as well. One thing you should be aware of is that when the program was initially launched, from a volume point of view in terms of the exams being taken for the EXIN IT Service Management Qualification Program, that far exceeded the original ITIL program when ITIL was originally launched. And it continues to outpace ITIL when ITIL first launched. It's still got a long way to go, to be clear and to be fair, but there is that focus and emphasis being put on actually marketing this as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Pedro. Thank you. So I'll move on. So as I was just saying, some people believe ITIL is the center of the IT service management universe, but it isn't. IT service management is at the center of the IT service management universe because there are many other best practices and frameworks and standards that can actually help us to achieve what we need to achieve regarding customer satisfaction, or regarding our own efficiency and effectiveness of how we actually deliver service management. This is an example that you see on the screen here of a few frameworks, standards, etc., that we all perhaps use from a day-to-day, month-to-month type basis as a reference point to help us to identify where we want to go. I've highlighted some of the more common ones that we see there as well. So what we're trying to do here is say, look, we're not ITIL-centric, we're IT service management-centric. And the important thing about IT service management is framework neutral. It's not tied directly to ITIL, it's not tied directly to COVID, etc., etc. it's tied directly to making sure that we deliver a good service to the customer. So as far as the qualification program is concerned, it took a direction from the international standard ISO IEC 20000, which is highlighted in orange in the middle of the screen, ISO 20K. I'll abbreviate that to ISO 20K when I refer to it in the future. And take that because ISO 20K is framework neutral as a standard. It does define the critical elements of service management as defined by practitioners across the world. I personally contributed as part of the UK's input to the development of ISO 20000. And there's generally committees within each standards board across many countries that actually contribute to the development of that particular standard. So it's very much practical based and very much focused on the critical must-do elements of service management. The content of that standard, and effectively the content that's reflected within the qualification program, is shown here on the screen. So a lot of these areas are probably going to be quite familiar to you. On the left-hand side, we have customer requirements and service requirements that come in. And then in the lighter grey areas are the more day-to-day operational type, service transition type processes that we have. All familiar to you, I think. I'm not going to go through those. Sat around that, over the top of the service delivery and control, resolution and relationship processes, and these titles are the titles that ISO 20K uses, is the design and transition of new or changed services. So as that name implies, that's taking a service from concept through to operation. But all this needs to be wrapped around a service management system that has clearly defined policies and governance in place, and how we manage our processes, how we manage our documents. And that's where the overall service management system sits. At the end of this, we deliver a good value to our services and good customer and good customer satisfaction, all being well. Now, some of you may have the question here in terms of, well, if this is tied to ISO 20K, does an organization or do the individuals themselves need to encourage their organizations to achieve ISO 20000 certification to actually benefit from this qualification program? The answer is no, that's not a mandatory need. I think I personally would encourage that, but as far as using the standard in the way that EXIN's used it, EXIN are just saying there are a series of requirements within ISO 20K. Let's use those requirements to give a scope and definition to the qualification program so that we stay within the must-do critical elements of service management as defined by what the industry has already defined for EXIN effectively through the ISO 20K program. So hopefully that gives you the link back into the 20K program, and that's clear in terms of how that actually works. Now, what I want to do is actually try and give you a relationship into one of the more common frameworks that's being used here, and how that relates to 20K, and also then back into the qualification program. So if I move on, everybody will probably recognize the ITIL service lifecycle here. So as far as the ITIL lifecycle is concerned, then if we went into the ITIL books and highlighted the critical, most important elements of the service management guidance that's within those ITIL books, which I've in concept done by putting these little green globes all over the ITIL lifecycle and suggested that that's the critical elements. And then on the right-hand side here we have the ISO 20K standard itself. And what effectively 20K has done, not specifically just with ITIL, because this can apply to all of the other frameworks that we've just talked about and others, is take out those critical elements and say this is what you must concentrate on within service management. And that ties them back into what EXIN have done with their qualification program. So hopefully you can see in concept what's actually happened there. And then, as far as the standard's concerned, it says these are the important elements. Then, if you're using ITIL as your framework, or if you're using COBIT or other frameworks, then you can go and navigate into those best practice guidance books and publications regarding those critical elements. So ITIL, if you will, could be phrased as being these are the things that you could do. You could do everything that's within the ITIL books. Personally, as a consultant, traveling worldwide for many years now around the IT service management space, I've never seen anybody that's implemented everything that ITIL says that you should do, or that you could do. What I have seen is people concentrating on everything that you must do, and that is critical. So by concentrating on everything that you must do, and which is critical and is going to resonate and work with your customers, then we have a very good chance of making sure that we deliver value to them and we spend our money where we need to spend it. And that again goes back to the qualification program concept that we live in a commercial world, we have to deliver on what we promise, and we have to get education that's focused on delivering to those critical elements, that's cost effective as well, from a time point of view also. Hopefully that helps a little bit. So as far as the program structure is concerned, I'll just talk a little bit about that now. So as far as the program structure is based on the must-do elements of IT service management, as I mentioned. So this is the EXIN qualification program. There's 4 levels. This has been revised. Originally at the associate level, the second level up, there was a number of modules, the professional modules. And to be honest with you, based on industry feedback and continual improvement, EXIN recognized that there's just too much there as far as having too many modules that try to span across too much information. So as part of continual improvement, EXIN held its virtual hand up and said, look, we need to revise this, and consolidated those professional modules into an associate module. And I'll talk about the content of these modules in a few minutes. If you have no knowledge in service management or no qualifications within service management, and then you would start at the foundation level and move up to the appropriate level at the point where you want to stop, perhaps at the top at the executive consultant manager. But by going at the initial foundation level and then into the associate level, you have a very good overview and understanding and detailed view at the associate level of how service management would operate. But so I'll go into more detail with these in the next few slides. So moving on to the key elements of the foundation and the foundation bridge. It's a 2-day training course. Typically, foundation courses in other schemes are 3 days, but by concentrating on those critical elements, rather than everything that we could look at, we're really focusing down in terms of these are the critical things that you need to understand. It's a 2-day training course. So that has clear benefits straight away in terms of a 33% saving in terms of downtime for someone being away from the office. And training courses themselves would actually be cheaper because it's a 2-day, not a 3-day course. I'll come on to the financial and commercial aspects towards the end of this presentation, just to illustrate the point. But it is focused on maintaining and ensuring that an individual has a basic understanding of IT service management, and that they can look at the key principles, concepts, and relationships regarding how the IT service management processes integrate together, and making sure they can talk in the same language as well, so the terminology is correct also. As I mentioned before, there are a number of side entry routes as far as this qualification program is concerned. This is just one example of them. There's a 1-day foundation bridge, as you can see here, for people with ITIL foundation. On the EXIN website, exin.com, if you go into the IT service management qualification program pages, you'll see that there's a link there through into the side entry route calculator. So you can go into that particular site and then enter your qualifications, and then the actual tool will tell you what credit you get within the EXIN qualification program and what you can do next. So it's quite a useful tool on exin.com. As far as the associate level is concerned, it is, as it says here, concentrating on Professor Edward Deming's cycle of plan, do, check, act, continual improvement, but how that actually applies across all of the different areas within service management, and how we can plan for example, with the resolution processes, incident and service request management and problem management, how we can plan for those processes, what things do we need to consider. And it's not just, and this is one thing for me that is something that I very much like about this program, but also about the standard itself. It's not just focused on process, it's also focusing on people and making sure that the cultural side of things is also assessed as part of this overall program as well. Because in my experience, I don't know if you would agree, but when there's any service improvement program happening within a company, it's quite easy to concentrate purely on the process or concentrate more on the process and getting a tool in place rather than the actual people side of things as well, and looking at, well, what support do our people need? How do we need to encourage them to perhaps use these new processes and tools and get involved in maybe designing them or testing them and using them? So I'm really encouraged by the fact that 20K, but also in particular this qualification program, does look at the people elements. So the associates looking in these particular areas. Again, there's an associate bridge, which allows for anybody with, for example, ITIL practitioner or intermediate certificates to be able to bridge across into this particular area and make sure that they can get a fast track into the wider understanding of IT service management as far as 20K in this qualification program is concerned. EXIN have just launched a new auditor qualification as well, just recently. And the auditor qualification is focused on trying to make sure that when people are assessing their IT service management capability, they're doing that in a consistent way with defined processes, with defined criteria, and that the artifacts or evidence or products, whichever term you want to use, that they are reviewing are reviewed in that consistent way against a defined standard. Excuse me, and the standard, of course, in this particular context is ISO 20. As I mentioned before, though, this isn't implying that every organization out there needs to go and try and achieve ISO 20K certification as an organization. I personally would encourage them to do so because it demonstrates that they're confident in their management system and that they are continually working at their management system. However, as far as this audit qualification program qualification is concerned, it purely uses 20K as a reference point to say, look, these are the critical things that we need to do. Therefore, why don't we assess ourselves against these critical things that practitioners in the industry worldwide have defined as those key important areas. They don't have to carry on to move on to ISO 20K certification for themselves as an organization, but they could do if they wish to do so. But the 20K program here, the ITSM qualification program for EXIN, basically says this is the reference point for us. So the requirements in 20,000 are used as a basis to say let's audit against these particular areas. There are prerequisites for the auditor qualification, as you see here. The ITSM Foundation or equivalent, and as I mentioned in terms of the equivalents, if you use the tool that's available on the exin.com website under the ITSM qualification area, that will give you all the various combinations of qualifications and what credit that will give you within the EXIN ITSM qualification program. There are far too many to go through in detail here. But if you use that tool, you can spend many hours enjoying yourself, seeing what you can actually do there. The auditor training course, of course, has to be taken through an accredited training provider, accredited by EXIN. And one good thing as well about this particular course is it is very much practically based. It's not all theoretical, talking about how do we go about auditing. There are actual various three practical assignments within this particular course. And again, that's a very good thing in terms of trying to move away from something that's theoretical into a more practical, how do I actually do this? It's great telling me about all these learning lessons, but then how do I actually apply this when I get back to the office? The EXIN qualification program helps you. Almost finished now. So, target audience for the consultant manager qualification, and what we have here, are basically the more senior managers or the aspiring managers that we have. It's focused on how to implement and maintain management systems in compliance with best practices, whichever best practice it might be, and also whichever international standard it could be. ISO 20K is the common one across ITSM. Of course, there's 27K as far as security management is concerned, and various other international ITSM standards as well. This course is a 5-day training course. The highest level in the service management qualification program is the executive consultant manager. And as part of the executive consultant manager, this is trying to focus on areas that the individual themselves is very much focused on the individual here. The individual has maybe not too much exposure to. So, for example, if I attended an executive consultant manager course and perhaps I wasn't too experienced in terms of setting and improving IT service management policies, then the facilitator, not the trainer, we very specifically use the term facilitator for this particular level of course. The facilitator and consultant would advise me as an individual attending this particular session on how I would go about defining the policies and maintaining them. And it's very much individually focused here. The sessions are based on initially a 2-day session where there's a familiarization regarding the actual content of the executive consultant course, and the attendees are given the opportunity to present on a topic that they're particularly expert in to the other attendees, and the facilitator consultant will also present based upon areas that are perhaps missing within the group. So together as a group, they fulfill a good, fantastic service management capability, and they can learn from each other. But then the facilitator consultant gives each candidate an assignment that they have to do over a 2 to 3 month period following that initial session. And the facilitator and consultant will provide remote support to the individuals over that 2 to 3 month period. That's like a practical based example, an assignment. So that assignment in the example I was given before would potentially be for me to define how I go about defining and implementing policies, so more on a practical basis. And then we'll come back at the end of the 2 to 3 month period with a final session where there's a presentation by each individual about what they've done during those 2 to 3 months and their experiences during this practical time. And that will be presented to a board, and the board will evaluate the content of that 2 to 3 month period and the contribution that person has made and decide whether there should be an award of the executive consultant manager qualification. I understand there is a question. So, hi David, how do these qualifications differentiate from the APMG 20K course, the foundation, the practitioner, and the auditor? Do they complement each other or replace each other? Okay, thank you, Sri. I hope I've got somewhere near pronouncing your name correctly. Apologies if I haven't. Yeah, as far as the APMG 20K courses are concerned, back in the day, many years ago, those qualifications used to be the ITSMF qualifications before APMG bought the qualifications from the ITSMF. When they were with the ITSMF, I was involved in actually setting those qualifications up as part of the ITSMF UK qualification board and working with a few other people to actually define those. I'm very familiar in terms of what those courses were and what they are today under the APMG scheme. As far as those courses are concerned, if I take the auditor within the APMG scheme is looking more at the requirements within 20K themselves, trying to explain what those requirements are, and then saying to the attendees, these are things you need to audit against. It's quite different to the auditor qualification within the EXIN program in terms of the EXIN program tells you more about how to audit as an audit discipline, as opposed to purely concentrating or heavily concentrating on the on the ISO 20K requirements themselves. So, as I mentioned at the start of this particular session, EXIN is looking at the role-based requirements of individuals. So in this particular case, the role-based requirements of an auditor, either an external or an internal auditor, and saying what do they need to know? They need to know how to go about auditing, and also how to audit within the context of 20K. And that's the difference between the two as far as the auditor is concerned. As far as the practitioner qualification within APMG is concerned, that is similar, but again different to the consultant qualification within the EXIN program, because again, APMG's practitioner concentrates more on being led by the standard and what the requirements are, and how you can actually advise a organization in terms of achieving those requirements as part of the practitioner, whereas the EXIN program is focused on more about the content of what those requirements are, and how you produce that content and then actually advise the clients on how that will be implemented. And the foundation level is similar to the EXIN foundation level, but EXIN go into a little bit more detail around quality management systems and how quality works. Hopefully that answers your question, Sricha. I notice there's another question from Pedro. Why is it so difficult to obtain companies, trainers, quotations and date courses to attend the Executive Consultant Manager course? Okay, good question. Plainly, because from a demand point of view at the moment, excuse me, it's difficult from a training organisation, because on the Executive Consultant Manager course, you typically have about 6 people on there. And there's a limited number of training providers that are currently accredited to the Executive Consultant Manager course. My company is accredited at that level, and I think there are a few others. Harold may be able to answer that question. But it's all part of the training providers getting used to this IT Service Management Qualification Program, which goes back to your earlier question, I think, Pedro, in the fact that there's many more training providers that are accredited at the foundation and professional stroke associate levels. At the top level, at the Executive Consultant Manager, there's not going to be as much volume at that level for a training provider. So it is more of a niche training course in that respect. So we don't necessarily, I'm speaking on behalf of EXIN, but as far as EXIN is concerned, I believe, and Harold, I'll ask you to comment on this in a second, EXIN believes the volume in this particular qualification program will come from the foundation and the associate, and to a certain degree the auditor level and consultant manager. At the Executive Consultant Manager, it's much lower. Therefore, training providers coming onto this will focus in the lower areas to start with, and then learn from that experience. Harold, any additional comments?
No, thank you, David. I think you have explained it very well, and that's exactly the case. So, Pedro, if you have more, if you would like to have more detailed answer, we can have a chat afterwards. I can give you a bit more insight in the accreditations, if that's okay with you. Because I'm also looking at the time. We have to move on because I think David has some more slides to go. Okay, Pedro?
Okay, let's move on then. So, in terms of that's the general structure around the qualification program. There's much more detail, of course, within the EXIN website, exin.com, and under the ITSM area. I want to just talk briefly about some of the program highlights, just to confirm back to you in terms of the general benefits of this program. Just in summary of what I've covered before. So, it's based on the latest edition of 20K. So, as I said, 20K being the worldwide recognized standard for service management that's being continually developed. A new version of it, a new edition of it was released in 2011. And 2011 edition is very current. It's very much focused on how the requirements of service management in today's modern world. And it will continue going through additional improvement. And there are new parts to ISO 20K that are being released over the coming years as well to help to guide people in terms of how they can go about implementing good service management based upon these critical areas. The qualification program, as I said, is very much focused on the practical side of things. It does encourage a quality attitude. There is maybe some of you have heard about the attitude, behavior, and culture, the ABC, the Paul Wilkinson series of books, and also cards that can actually help you in terms of concentrating on the cultural and people-based elements of service management. I'd encourage you to have a look at those because, as I'm sure we all know, the people side is very important in terms of making sure that service management operates well. I mentioned before about it being role-based and that we are framework neutral as a qualification program. It's not the ITIL qualification program. 20K isn't the ITIL standard. 20K is a service management framework, service management standard, sorry, and the qualification program is based on service management and the wider concepts of service management. Harold, what I'm going to do is actually jump to my last slide that I want to talk through today. And this is something I mentioned before about the qualification program and how it actually relates commercially within the world that we live in today. Because it's fine to have developed something that may be covering everything that service manager could potentially want to hear about, but maybe that's too early in their experience. Maybe they just want to concentrate on getting these critical elements right to start with. So let me just illustrate this for you. So in this example I've got here, the objective is from a qualified education perspective, take a service management professional from initial involvement in service management, so they're new to service management, to being able to competently analyze, evaluate, and perform service management activities and products. Or in other words, to ultimately become a service manager, okay? So take them from nothing to being a service manager from a qualification perspective. So if we look at the ITIL qualification scheme, to get to that point and effectively to become an ITIL expert, you would need to go through the ITIL Foundation, the ITIL Life Cycle, and then the ITIL Managing Across the Life Cycle route to actually get there. As far as the EXIN ITSM qualification program is concerned, you would have to go through the foundation, the associate, and then the consultant manager to get to an equivalent service manager level. Now, as I've said before, the content of the service management, the green, the one on the right, the EXIN qualification program, the content of that is focused on what people need to critically know and understand. The ITIL qualification scheme is focused on all of the content of the ITIL books. So it's concentrating on everything that you could do, or on the green side, it's everything that you must do. Pedro, if you just bear with me, I'll come to you in a second. I've seen that you've got your virtual hand up. Thank you. Okay. Now, from a commercial point of view, if we look at the must-do training, critical elements, and integrated focus. Could-do training is a wide and deep focus. From a commercial point of view, to get to a service manager that's understanding about service management to a very good level of detail, focused on the critical elements and how to do these things, would cost you 12 days training time, just over 5,000 euros in training cost as a general average within the industry. That's including the course fees and the exam fees. But it would also cost you operational downtime, time away from the office, which could again be into the thousands of euros, versus do you want to spend an additional 11 days to 23 days worth of training effort and over 10,000 euros to get to understand everything that you could do. That's the conundrum. You take the ITIL route, or potentially you take the EXIN ITSM qualification route. In today's world, from a commercial perspective, if I was a budget holder within an organization and I believed that I could get someone to a service manager level focusing on the critical elements that they need to understand and actually how to apply it and be more culturally aware, then I would go for the EXIN IT Service Management Qualification Program. Hopefully you would agree with that. But let's see what, Pedro, you've got a question. If you could maybe unmute.
Hello, David. These are recommended costs or prices or the market prices?
As far as the courses are concerned?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No, they're not recommended prices at all. These are, what I've done is look at people, accredited training providers for EXIN on the right-hand side to say these are the average sort of prices that training providers are charging. It's not a recommended price by EXIN. I should be exceptionally clear on that. Thank you for asking that question. And the same applies to the other side as far as ITIL is concerned. These are general averages within the industry in terms of training provider prices. The exam prices are the EXIN exam prices in euros, but the courses are general industry prices. Hopefully that answers your question, Pedro.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I haven't got any other slides apart from saying for additional information. There is basic training material on the extranet for EXIN APP. No accreditation fee for the foundation level and the bridge, so people can get straight into delivering that course. The foundation level is in line with this book that's been written by Michael Kunas, so there's some publication support there, and of course on the website you can get further details.